My name is Stanislaw Robert Liberto with AV Ultra, and today we're going to be talking about rigs in Apple Motion. This is going to be another lesson where we're talking about Final Cut and Motion together. If you don't have Final Cut, this may not be something you're too interested in. However, I do recommend that you do check it out just like the other lessons, because you might find that you're going to be using this a lot, and having Final Cut combined with Motion is a really great combination. In previous lessons, we've talked about publishing parameters and even making title templates for use in Final Cut. With rigs, we can take all of that one step further. So what do I mean by that? I'm in Final Cut and I've put together my little social generator, and I've placed this on top of some video. And you'll notice that in my publish parameters, I have a lot more things than I would normally have if I was just publishing, say, size, scale, and a drop zone. I still have those, but I have a few more things. For example, I have a checkbox, which lets me turn specific things on or off. I even have a drop-down menu. For example, I've set this one up here to work with YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And if I turn on the Instagram, instantly you can see that that has changed that single generator. Additionally, in my Instagram color choices, I have a slider here which lets me choose between different kinds of color shades. So this is a really powerful way to bundle lots of different things together into one title or one generator. The benefits to this being, maybe you want to have several different choices and you want to be able to swap things out very quickly and very easily without having to publish lots of different titles, and so you're not clogging up your Final Cut with a bunch of different things. Or perhaps you were going to be working with somebody else, or you're using something over and over again and you just want to be able to swap some things out. One last example is, even though that I have this Instagram here, maybe I'm not going to be using this for Instagram. Maybe I'm going to be turning this off, and instead of this Instagram, I'm just going to click here and put in my own logo. And now I've worked with this and changed this, even though that this was originally set up for an Instagram kind of thing. Now I can just use it for whatever. So having rigs and publish parameters are huge. So let's go ahead and take a deeper look at exactly what's happening. Follow the link in the description and you can grab lesson 15 start and lesson 15 end. Let's open up the 15 end and just take a look at what this is made up of. If you'll notice, in my project, I have my 3 different main layers, which is my YouTube red and everything it's made up of, my Twitter blue, and my Insta purple. And above those, I have these little joystick controllers, and these are my rigs. These let me bundle a bunch of different publish parameters together and maybe link them to a specific controller. So for example, I've got this Instagram colors as I'm dragging through, it's changing these different values. If I go to my social control, you can see I have a pick social here, and I have my YouTube, my Instagram, and my Twitter. And if I just pick Twitter, for example, you can see that I have these different values change. So what rigs do is it lets you link several different published parameters to one control point. So let's go ahead and build out this rig to control the background, publish our drop zones, and be able to switch between them, all controllable from one generator in Final Cut. Open up your lesson 15 start and you can see those 3 different layers I was talking about. So if I turn these on or off, I've got my YouTube red, my Twitter blue, and my Insta purple. I'm going to turn all those back on. They're all the same animation. All I did was duplicate them and change out the drop zones. So if you want to see how this is built, feel free to dig into one of these layers and you can kind of see how this is built. To create a rig, what we're going to do is go to Add Object. Rig is something we haven't added before. And when I click on rig, it's going to ask me what kind of a rig it is. For our purposes right now, what we're going to do is just work with this YouTube red, and I'm going to make it a checkbox. And what this checkbox is going to do is turn on or off this background layer. So I'm going to turn off these other guys for right now, since we're just working with this YouTube red and this checkbox. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and rename this rig to YouTube. And under this checkbox, I want to be able to connect the background opacity of this layer to this checkbox. So if I go under YouTube, and I want to go to my gradient. And if I go to my gradient, I can go to my opacity here. And just like we were publishing parameters before, you'll notice we have publish, and that'll add it to the published parameters, or I can add it to this rig. And you can see I have my two choices. I can add it to YouTube, and there is add to checkbox, or I can even create a new rig right away. So I don't necessarily have to create this through new object. I just wanted to showcase where that was in the add object in case you ever were wondering about that. We're going to go to add to rig, YouTube, add to checkbox. And if I come back to my checkbox, you can see there is my checkbox and my edit mode and the gradient opacity, and it's got that little joystick here. What I want to do is edit, and I'm hitting start, and I'm dragging the opacity to 0. And now I'm hitting stop rig edit mode. So what I've told this is now when this checkbox is unchecked, have the opacity at 0%. If I check this, notice it jumps back to 100%. And that is exactly what I want. So I've got this checkbox in here, and I need to be able to publish this parameter. Just because it's in a rig doesn't necessarily mean it's published. If I go to my project and my publish parameters, all I've got are my drop zones, and I've already added the scale here since that's just what I do by default. Almost anytime I have a drop zone, I'm going to want to be able to scale it. So if I go to my checkbox and I go to checkbox and I can go to publish. And now under my project, I have checkbox. Right now, checkbox doesn't give me a lot of information. So I'm going to drag this up on top since I know that this is my YouTube. And I'm going to go ahead and name it YouTube BG on off. And I can double check that just to make sure it works. And that looks great. Let's go ahead and turn that back on and now add slider rig. I want to be able to choose between some different colors. Maybe I don't necessarily want this red and black. I want to be able to choose between 3 or 4 specific kinds of ranges of color. So I'm going to go to my gradient. I'm going to select my color. I'm going to go to my color and we're going to add to rig, YouTube, add to new slider. And so this is going to affect my red. I'm going to go back into my gradient, select that black, go to my color, add to rig, YouTube, add to slider. And so here's our slider. I'm going to go ahead and rename that right away. Color, slider. And you'll notice I have 2 different dots here. This is basically a range between 0 and 100. And I want to create another one somewhere in between here. And I can do that by just, let's say, go to around 50 and click right there. And it's going to make a new choice. So now I have 0, right around 50, and 100. Now, if I hit start, I can go ahead and choose a new value for these. So for example, I want this to be yellowish gold. Zoom that out so we can see that. And this inner gradient, and that'll be 1. We'll hit stop. Here's my original. Here's third choice. And in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and click this guy again, hit start, choose some different values. It's basically going to give me choices in between A and B and then B and C. If I don't want this guy, I can just get rid of him. And it's just going to give me choices A and B. We can also add more and add lots of different parameters. I'm going to undo that just so that way I have those 3 in here. And in my color slider, I want to go ahead and publish that as well. If I go to my YouTube rig, you can see I have my color slider and my checkbox. And if I go to my project, this is the way it's always going to look when it comes into Final Cut. There's color slider. I'm going to rename this YouTube color slider. I'm going to drag this here. I have my background on or off and my color slider. Now that I have this YouTube rig completed, what I want to do is create another one for my Twitter and my Instagram. One caveat with working with these rigs is I can't just duplicate it. The reason being is because these specific color sliders are attached to other parameters built into this YouTube rig. So if I duplicated it, I'd basically have to go in here and unhook all of these and rehook them into something else. I think that's the main reason why Apple doesn't let you do it, but I'm not 100% certain. What I can do though is just continue on and do the same thing that I did with my YouTube and do that for my Twitter and Instagram. So I'm going to do that very quickly here. So that covers our checkboxes and our sliders. One last one that we want to put together though is we want to be able to switch between all these different social backgrounds at any time. So what I can do is create another rig that is separate from these. So I'll go to my add object, create rig, and this one is going to be called social control. And this one is going to be a pop-up. A pop-up is a little bit different because what it does is it gives you different choices here. So we have snapshot 1, 2, and 3. And what I want to do is I want to take the opacity of these whole sections and attach them to different snapshots. Go to my Instagram group, go to properties, and take the whole opacity of this entire group. And I want to add this to the social control and add it to the pop-up. I'm going to do the same thing for the other two. And if I go to my social control and my pop-up, here's what we've got. We've got our opacity for the YouTube, the Twitter, and the Instagram. I'm going to rename this snapshot 1 to YouTube. And I'm going to hit start. And what I want to do is drag the opacities of the other two down to 0. Now I hit stop rig edit mode. Now we'll go to snapshot 2. And snapshot 2 again is all at 100%. We're going to rename this one and call it Twitter. And I'll hit start. And this time we want to take the opacity of the YouTube red and the Instagram purple to 0% and leave Twitter blue. You'll notice that it's totally black here, and that's okay. The reason for that is because the actual layer's turned off. So if I turn that on, you can see it. So if that happens to you, just be aware that this is really just controlling that opacity value, not the on or off. So I can go ahead and leave that at 100%. And I'll go to the last snapshot, and I'm going to rename that one and call that Instagram. Hit start, and I'll turn these other two down. Stop rig edit mode. And now I should be able to switch between these, and you can see that it's turning one on and the other two off. The last thing we want to do is go to this pop-up and publish it. If I go to my project and my project settings, we have our pop-up on the bottom here. I'm going to drag that all the way to the top, and I'm going to rename this social picker. In here, right now I have my Twitter. And if I go to my YouTube, now you can see I've got my YouTube, and I can also turn that background on or off. I can change the color of that. What I can do is I can control most of those parameters without having to reopen Motion and export a different one. Last thing we want to do is we want to publish this as a template. And if I publish this as a Final Cut generator, I'm just going to put in my category AV Ultra. And I already have a theme here called social, and we're going to call this Social Picker. I'm going to save this as a preview movie, and we'll hit publish. If I come back into Final Cut, I should be able to have all that work. So if I go to my generators, here's my AV Ultra, there is my social picker. And from here you can see I can test this, make sure everything works. So there's my YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. So that is a brief introduction to rigs. Rigs are extremely powerful because you can really use them to change lots of different things at once without having to dig into Motion. If you're building templates for somebody else, maybe a different editor who may not be as versed in Motion, or you just want to be able to create something that will be very versatile for your different projects, I really recommend checking out rigs. And if you like some of this work, check out my new store I just put together. Got a few different titles, and I even have a free pack of 10 lower thirds and titles that you can check out. You can find the link in the description below, but if you feel like supporting me and checking out some great titles I put together, check that out. Again, my name is Stanislaw Robert Liberta with AV Ultra, and this has been all about rigs in Motion and Final Cut. Thanks a lot for watching.